Central to the effort is the urgent need to transit away from fossil fuel and towards clean and renewable energy source. We must recognize that the continued extraction and burning of fossil fuel not only exacerbates the climate crisis, but also creates social injustice and economic inequality. In Sierra Leone, we are already experiencing the impact of climate change firsthand. Our coastal communities are facing the existence threat of sea level rise, whilst our agricultural sector is grappling with increasing erratic weather patterns. These challenges underscore the imperative for decisive action to transit to clean, renewable energy. But the transition to renewable energy is not just a matter of environmental necessity. It is also an opportunity for economic transformation and social justice. By investing in renewable energy infrastructure, we can create jobs, stimulate economic growth, and empower local communities. Moreover, by prioritizing renewable energy access for marginalized and vulnerable population, we can ensure that no one is left behind in the transition to a sustainable future. However, the transition to renewable energy transition requires more than just political will. It also requires adequate financing. Climate finance plays a crucial role in supporting developing countries like Sierra Leone in their effort to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Yet access to climate financing remains a challenge for many countries, particularly those in the global south. As parliamentarians, we must advocate for increased climate financing flow to support renewable energy development and climate resilience initiatives in developing countries. We must hold developed countries accountable for their commitments to provide climate finance and ensure that these funds are accessible, predictable, non-debt creating, and directed towards the most vulnerable communities. Furthermore, we must address the root cause of climate change and fossil fuel dependence by phasing out harmful subsidies and redirect investment towards renewable energy. And to tell you, in Sierra Leone, in our budget, we have removed fuel subsidy and we have redirected it to agriculture because our main goal now is feed Sierra Leone. Let us seize this moment as parliamentarians to reaffirm our commitment to climate action and sustainable development. Let us work together across political boundaries and national borders to accelerate the transition away from fossil fuel towards future powered by clean, renewable energy. Together, we can build a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world for all. Thank you very much.
Your notes here. Thank you. Now I request Honorable Cecilia Isabel Requena Zarate, Member of Parliament, Plurinational State of Bolivia, Latin America. Take the floor. Time is 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Your Excellency, Prime Minister of Nepal, members of Parliament, the Nepalese government and others like us coming from so different countries, members of civil society, journalists, academia that are here present with us. It is, Mr. Prime Minister, a real honor to be able to speak in front of you, but also in front of the audience in Kathmandu, Nepal. I am Cecilia Requena. I come from Bolivia, South America. It's also a country with high mountains, as Nepal. In our case, we also have the Amazonas region, and I, for instance, live at 3,600 meters above sea level, so higher than Kathmandu. And I have felt at home here, and I love Kathmandu, I have to say. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm also chair of the committee in charge of climate change in the Senate in Bolivia. I'm also part of our network for a fossil-free future. I want to talk a little bit about the energy transition. It is an honor to stand before you today at this high-profile parliamentarians event and at the World Social Forum, where we gather to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, the transition to a sustainable energy system. As a senator from Bolivia, a country rich in opportunities around the 21st century challenges that has still to envision and agree on a sustainable, prosperous, and just future, and deeply committed to environmental stewardship, I am acutely aware of the urgency and importance of the energy transition. The world is at a critical juncture, facing unprecedented threats from climate change and environmental degradation. The burning of fossil fuels, once considered a pillar of economic development, is now recognized as a primary driver of global warming and ecological destruction. As parliamentarians, we have a crucial role to play in facilitating this transition to sustainable energy systems. We must harness the power of legislation, policy making, and advocacy to drive meaningful change and ensure a just and equitable transition for all. Here are some key areas where parliamentarians can make a difference. The first one, shaping the future we need, along with civil society and other key social, political, and economical actors, fully engage in the co-creation of a new vision, a new story of the possible future, as well as a critical and evidence-based pathway to initiate that important changes that are required, including the courage to advance as soon as possible. Apparently, Nepal is already there. We have a lot of work to do in Bolivia and many other countries. Legislative action, that would be the second area in which we can contribute. Parliamentarians can enact laws and regulations that promote renewable energy development, incentivize clean energy investments, and phase out subsidies for fossil fuels in my country's case, Bolivia, fossil fuel subsidies are one of the most important economic and therefore political challenges that has to be addressed within an integral strategy, in order to avoid further and severe damage to the economy of most Bolivians in the short and medium term through inflation, for instance. We are not there yet. We still have subsidies. This is a huge challenge for us, but precisely by setting ambitious renewable energy targets and establishing supportive legal frameworks, we can create and enable environment for renewable energy deployment that will soothe, accelerate, and provide cheap and accessible alternatives for the necessary transition. Third, policy advocacy. Parliamentarians can advocate for policies that prioritize renewable energy deployment and address barriers to its adoption. This includes gathering and communicating data and viable proposals in coordination with academia, civil society, and the innovative private sector, and communities that want to be early adopters. advocating for the removal of damaging regulatory barriers, promoting renewable energy financing mechanisms that facilitate access and promote social justice, and supporting research and development in clean energy technologies. Fourth, public awareness. Parliamentarians can raise awareness among the public about the benefits of renewable energy, best practices, successful cases relevant to our specific conditions, and the urgent need to transition away from fossil fuels. By engaging with constituents, organizing public forums like this, and leveraging media platforms, we can build support for renewable energy and mobilize the grassroots movement. Last one, international cooperation. Parliamentarians can collaborate with their counterparts, as we're doing right now, to exchange best practices, share lessons learned, and advocate for global action on renewable energy. By participating in international forums and negotiations, we can strengthen international cooperation on renewable energy. Bolivia is blessed with abundant renewable energy resources, including solar, wind, hydroelectric, and geothermal power. By harnessing these resources and investing in clean energy infrastructure, we can reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and promote sustainable development by reinforcing the distributed and decentralized potential of renewables that can dramatically change the living conditions, especially in remote rural areas in the Amazonas region, and also in cities with better air quality and less noise. We can also contribute to very modestly, to mitigate climate change. We're not the main responsibles. Our biggest and significant contribution in case of Bolivia to the climate crisis is forest clearing and burning, including growing forest wildfires for agriculture purposes. But no country, I'm about to finish, but no country can achieve this transition alone. It requires shared vision beyond party lines, that's really important, collective action, political will, and international cooperation. As parliamentarians, we have a responsibility to our constituents, our planet, and future generations to lead this transition courageously and build sustainable and equitable world. Let us seize the opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the transition to sustainable energy systems, our commitment to conditions that enhance the opportunities of co-creating a better present and future, especially for the most vulnerable. Let us work together across borders and political divides to accelerate the adoption of renewable energy systems and create a viable and brighter future for us all. Thank you.
Now I request Honorable Raul Manuel, Member of Parliament, Republic of Philippines.
Good afternoon, everyone. To the officials of Nepal, especially the Honorable Prime Minister, I would like to extend my sincere thanks for hosting us in this forum. I am Raul Manuel, Member of the House of Representatives of the Philippines and National President of the Kabataan or the Youth Party in our country. Through my experience as a member of the House Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Committee on Energy, and Committee on Natural Resources, I felt the urgent need for us to work together to create a world that is sustainable and livable for the youth and the future generations. Being in the legislative branch of government, I, as representative of the Youth Party, strive to fulfill the role of us legislators, not only to file bills, but also to act as check and balance to the executive branch. Most recently, I'd like to share as an example that several legislators in the Philippines pointed out through investigations in Parliament some double standards of institutions whenever there is a response to climate change. In the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program of the Philippines, government agencies are forcing the phase-out of traditional public vehicles called jeepneys due to concerns on the smoke that they emit. thereby sacrificing the jobs of thousands of drivers, while putting aside the fact that their emissions constitute only a small percentage of total emissions, and while neglecting the big polluters. If there is something that has to be phased out, it is not our traditional vehicles, our jeepneys, nor the livelihoods of Filipinos in the transport sector or other sectors. It is the use of fossil fuels that has to be phased out. The current administration, unfortunately, still has not committed to bolder acts, such as to swiftly and decisively phase out fossil fuel use. In fact, the House of Representatives, as a body, approved a bill that will expand the use of natural gas in the Philippines. Aside from investigations and discussions in Parliament, my role as a young parliamentarian includes consulting, working with, and protecting youth organizations and young people who play a critical role in providing environmental policy inputs and recommendations that reflect sentiments from the grassroots. In September last year, my office called for the release of 2 young environmental defenders, 2 females in fact, Jed Tamano and Junila Castro, who were abducted for more than 2 weeks by the military of the current administration due to their efforts in shedding light on destructive reclamation activities in Manila Bay and flooding in nearby communities. Just yesterday, I'd like to share some good news that the Philippine Supreme Court granted the request of these 2 young climate advocates, Jed and Janila, for temporary protection orders. This shows that the issue of climate action is closely connected to ensuring justice, especially for already marginalized communities. When it comes to funding the transition, we actively participate in national budget deliberations and make sure that climate expenditure tagging is truthful and contributes to intended goals. We must scrutinize the projects, activities, and programs that have been tagged as climate expenditure. And we demand that climate-tagged budget items are not mere piecemeal, scattered, and band-aid acts in our attempt to mitigate the effects of climate change, but they must be part of genuine shifts in infrastructure and economic policy. So once again, in behalf of us parliamentarians in the Philippines who call for fossil fuel phase out, for more funding, especially for us in the Global South, we thank you for this opportunity to share and also to hear from other participants. Good afternoon, everyone.
As a last speaker from abroad, now I call upon Honorable Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, member of Legislative Council of Palestine, to say a few words. Time is 5 minutes.
Thank you. Right Honorable Prime Minister Prashanda, Honorable Minister and Honorable Members of Parliament and representatives of civil society. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to be for the first time in your wonderful country, Nepal. I'm so impressed not only by the beauty of the country, but also by the kindness and hospitality of your people. So thank you so much for hosting us. One of the greatest challenges that face humanity today is the issue of climate change. It is absolutely known and it is absolutely correct that there is a connection between climate change and sustainable development. They are, of course, intertwined. We all also know that reduction of fossil fuel and carbon emissions is possible. It's not impossible, it's very possible. But we also all know that the main reason why this is not happening is that because some people, some countries are making a lot of profit and they don't want to get rid of it. We also all know that most of the emissions are happening in the rich countries. who have the biggest amount of industry, etc. But we also know that it is very essential for members of parliaments worldwide, as well as the very important civil society, and the fact that the social forum is being held today is an expression of the value and importance of civil society. We all know how crucial the role of civil society is in advocacy and lobbying and pressuring governments to change the policies for the sake of all humanity. Sorry, I do not want to deviate the attention from the main topic here, which is climate change, but I am a Palestinian. And you know that one of the gravest and most dangerous things that destroy climate and environment are the wars. Today we have a terrible humanitarian disaster in Gaza and in Palestine because of a terrible aggression where the Israeli army has thrown no less than 68,000 tons of explosives on a very little small place called Gaza, which is only 140 square miles with 2.3 million people. It's much bigger than the total power of the 2 nuclear bombs that were thrown on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the environmental disaster is beyond description. 5% of the population of Gaza have already been killed or injured. 5%, including 11,000 children. That's why, without deviating the attention from the important subject today, I call on you to pressure for an immediate ceasefire, to end occupation, and to achieve just and lasting peace. Thank you so much.
Now I call upon the special guest of this meeting, Honorable Minister Dr. Birendra Prasad Mahato, the Minister of Forest and Environment, to take the floor.
Chairperson of the program, Honorable Prakash Pantju, Chief Guest, Right Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Pakamal Dahal Prachandji, distinguished parliamentarians from home and abroad, guests, media friends, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to share a few words in this important program on climate change and sustainable development. Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are part of the global commitment that member countries to the United Nations adopted in 2015 to combating poverty, protecting the global environment, and enhancing the prosperity of people now and for the future. Sustainable development and climate change are closely interconnected. As you all are aware, climate change has become one of the greatest challenges for the world community. Addressing these challenges requires collective and holistic action at multiple levels. The impacts of climate change pose significant risks of economics, ecosystem, and humanity as a whole. We must take more action on the ground to adapt the lessons climate change affects. Distinguished parliamentarians, Nepal is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and extreme weather events due to its location in fragile mountainous ecosystem and limited resources and technology to adapt. In this age, we cannot sacrifice development and if the development is not properly planned and nature friendly, it will not be sustainable. Unsustainable development is not only dangerous for mankind, but also is currently pushes the climate change. As per the significant report published by the EC even we achieve the temperature target 1.5 degrees Celsius, on third of the glaciers in the Himalayan region will melt by the end of this century. We are already facing dangerous, disproportionate and damaging impacts of climate crisis, including increasingly severe floods and landslides. We understand that these impacts will further increase. The climate change we are experiencing today arises from the cumulative effects of 2 centuries of understandable industrial development, energy production, land use, lifestyle, and consumption patterns. Sustainable Development Goal 13 specifically aims to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Today, climate change is not only an environmental problem, it is the biggest challenge for unsustainable development. Comprehensive and coordinated efforts are required to pursue sustainable development and address climate change. For implementing SDG in Nepal, Nepal Constitution have provided a strong foundation and conducive environment. Distinguished parliamentarians, Nepal has presented ambitious climate action in our NDC, including exploitation of clean energy generation and forest coverage, use of electric vehicles, and replacement of the gas with clean electric cooking. To devise this plan into action, we have also prepared an NDC implementation plan. Nepal's 45% land mass is under forest cover, and we are committed to maintaining this for all time. Forests play crucial role achieving these 17 different goals of SDGs. From the generation of income and employment to the provisioning of goods and emulsion the environment. Our resource of electricity of 100% clean coming from hydropower. In the coming years, many new hydropower projects are coming into operation and creating an energy surplus. So Nepal has a plan to use it for electric mobility and electric cooking at home and sell clean energy to neighboring countries. Ladies and gentlemen, as the parliamentarians have to the mandate and responsibility to frame policies and legal arrangements, we are in the position to address the climate crisis. To achieve the target of the SDG, we have only less than 7 years in our hand. SDG target achieved by less than the whole world would not justifiable as a situation of the problem. In the situation, we should always be keen and sensitive to those countries that are not technically and financially capable of achieving the goals. Dear guests and parliamentarians, on behalf of the government of Nepal, the Ministry of Forests and Environment and my own, I welcome all the foreign parliamentarians and guests who have taken the time to travel to Nepal, make this program more meaningful, and I wish you are all present stay in Nepal and happy return back home. Please kindly allow me to take this opportunity to thank both organizers, the Parliamentary Committee on Sustainable Development and Governance of the Parliament of Nepal, and the International Parliamentarians Committee on Fossil Fuel Phase Out. In the end, I would like to extend my best wishes for the success of this program. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I now request Right Honorable Prime Minister, the chief guest of the program, to deliver a keynote speech. Right Honorable Prime Minister.
Very good afternoon and namaste to everybody. And I wish every success of this very unique and historic initiative and program. Chair of the session, Honorable Minister for Forest and Environment, respected international parliamentarians and distinguished guests, Honorable Member of the House of Representatives and National Assembly of Nepal, distinguished guest, media person. I thank international parliamentarians for fossil fuel phase out and national important conference on the role of parliamentarians in addressing climate change and sustainable development. I feel privileged to welcome honorable parliamentarians from the globe and Nepal and other distinguished guests in this conference. I am confident that this conference will reflect on our action against the global environmental crisis and forge common understanding and strategies on climate justice and sustainable development. Climate change is evolving as a major global threat that posing enormous challenges to socio-economic and environmental well-being. Climate science underlines that if current greenhouse gas emissions do not rapidly decline in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, the prospect for climate resilient development will be severely limited. LDCs are more vulnerable to the impact of the climate change and are in desperate need of financial and technological support. As you may have well aware that during UNGA, I tried to raise the issue of the climate change, particularly on behalf of the LDCs country, especially because currently Nepal is the chair of the LDCs. As a chair of the LDCs, I tried to strongly appeal the international community about the terrible impact of the climate change in the LDCs. Nepal is bearing a direct, disproportionate and damaging effect of climate change despite near zero contribution to global emission. Due to an appalling injustice inflicted on us, our people are severely affected by climate-induced disasters such as landslide, floods, wildfires, glacier lake outbursts, drought, etc. Because terrible impact is there in Nepal, therefore, during UNGA, I requested Secretary General of the UN to visit Nepal and directly have an interaction with the local peoples who are directly affected by the climate change. He agreed to visit Nepal and it has a very huge impact all over the world. Secretary General, during COP28, I chaired a roundtable conference of the mountainous country and he made a very strong speech in favor of the LDCs and the effect of the climate change. I am deeply concerned about the finding of the recent IPCC report that states climate-induced disaster breaking records in the Himalayas. we have already lost 1/3 of our glaciers. And scientists have warned that we are going to lose another 1/3 by the end of this century. The Himalayas are the foundation of human civilization, ecosystem and biodiversity. They are providing global service to the people and the planet and are the source of livelihoods for billions of people downstream. Distinguished participants, I have strongly highlighted the repercussion of climate change in mountainous region and least developed country in all forums, including the 78th UNGA Climate Ambition Summit and COP28 in Dubai. As the chair of the LDCs, I urge the developed economy and the international community for more predictable and adequate and equitable resources and technology for LDCs. I emphasize the criticality of meeting the $100 billion climate finance obligation, accelerating climate action through Green Climate Fund, and implementing the loss and damage fund in a manner that is easy to access and implement for the LDCs. I appreciate and thanks to the United Nations Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres for his recent visit to Nepal, collecting first-hand information of the climate change impact from the local communities who are facing the climate crisis. Dear friends, Nepal is fully committed to the Paris Agreement. We are committed to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2045, 5 years earlier than the global target. We are fully committed to utilize our hydropower potential to secure clean energy and maintain 45% forest covered land. Recently, I unveiled the National Adaptation Plan and NDC Implementation Plan with a clear roadmap and strategy to promote climate resilient and sustainable development in Nepal. However, our attempts to implement climate change adaptation and mitigation plans are facing serious financial and technological gaps. Nepal needs additional resources to make our ecosystem and people resilient to climate change and ensure the implementation of local-led adaptation climate roadmap and programs. I strongly believe in the necessity of initiating dialogue among the parliamentarians and policymakers globally to advocate together for climate justice and to safeguard a sustainable future for ecosystem, people, and our planet. Dear friends, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude for your valuable presence and extend our sincere thanks to all those in attendance, including the honorable parliamentarians from different countries. As you know that tremendous political changes were there in the last decade in this country. Now we are trying our best to create a political stability and create the atmosphere for economic construction. But this climate change issue is much sensitive and much terrible issue for our country. And I think that this initiative and this forum of the parliamentarians all over the world will create a more positive atmosphere, more effective interference on this issue. Finally, I stand in solidarity with you all as strong advocates for a sustainable planet. Let us work together and work together toward an emission-free world. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, at the last of this session, now I request